for the construction. Our last speaker is Dr. Vincent Nierstrasz to speak about trends in sports and wearables. He comes from Sweden and is a professor in textile materials technology at the University of Boras since November 2011. He was previously appointed at Ghent University as Senior Research and Marie Curie Fellow. At the University of Twente, he was appointed as Assistant Professor. He holds a PhD degree from Delft University of Technology and a Master degree from Wageningen Agricultural University. His research focus on in-surface modification and functionalization of textiles materials for production, functional and smart textiles. He was involved in several European projects, and he is also a foreign member of the Royal Holland Society of Science and Humanities. Please, Vincent, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you for your kind introduction. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm really happy to present the activities or the domain of Working Group 5, which is in the domain of smart textiles in sport and wearables. And I like to stress that with sports, I mean, this is a very broad domain. This can be from professional athletes to elderly performing fitness. And this is all in the domain of our working group. Why do we like to have smart textiles anyway in this domain? And I wrote down a few of the arguments that we often see and hear. And one is, of course, that the close fitting of sportswear could be an ideal base for embedding sensors. And then, of course, we'd like to emphasize on true textile and sensors. And I think that's what we'll also see later on in my presentation, that in the early stages of smart textiles and sports, we speak more about integration of more conventional sensors, connectors and energy supplying devices. And in the future, of course, it will be more true textile materials when it comes to sensors and energy is the idea. Potential for accurate sensing could eliminate noise, improve performance of athletes, reduce injuries, safety in terms of information about, for example, heart or breathing, but also about location. Comfort, I didn't put it here, but I think comfort is a very important aspect as well. And of course, fun, I think, should not be underestimated. People simply like to see with their electronic devices where they have been and how they have been performing. So don't underestimate the importance of fun in this domain. And in addition to that, I think it has enormous market potential, so that is also an important reason to study this. And perhaps there's a lot of other arguments that I did not mention yet, but you will most probably know more about that. What I also like to stress, and I think we already saw that this morning in the presentation about medical smart textiles, but also in the personal protective equipment, and I think it's the same also in a lot of military developments in this domain. It is extremely multidisciplinary, and I borrowed two pictures from scientific literature where you see that the authors try to depict in different ways how different technologies integrate in this domain. But I also like to highlight that it's much more than only the integration of technical sciences. It is also about design. It is about fit. It is about individualized production, because if you're going to make textiles with sensors, fit is extremely important. So also there's domains like 3D body scanning and how users interpret this. So haptics are included as well. So these pictures are important, but there's much more domains coming together here. To give you an overview about what we speak, I like to present 3 different reports about expectations in market potential. So this is not my opinion. This is facts from other science publications. And they try to make an estimate about the size of the smart textile market globally. And what you can see from the three different studies is that the figures go up, but they're rather different. So the first study that I found or like to mention here it's from 2016. They expect a 1.8 billion market in 2021 for all smart and functional textiles. So functional, that includes like antimicrobial textiles, self-cleaning textiles. We have seen more examples about that earlier this morning. The expectation is about 134 million US dollars is on sensors in smart textiles for sports, and the expectation is that these will be mainly pressure sensors for different applications. They expect a market percentage of 55% for medical. The percentage for the other domains were not given. In other studies it is somewhat lower, like $700 US in 2014, growing to 8 billion, so higher I must say, in 2023. An important market share for Europe as well. The growth in the sports and fitness domain is forecasted to be 33%. So this is really an important domain, I think, for our industries. And again, high expectations for healthcare and military. The third study I found is a bit more detailed. Again, estimates till 2024. So they distinguish now in fashion, medical, defense, military, sport, transportation and architecture. And what we see is that here medical is a smaller market share as in the previous studies I mentioned, but it is especially defense, where a lot of progress is expected according to the study. Architecture, so as we just learned a lot about, and as well sport and fitness as the three leading markets in 2024. So I think that really shows the importance in terms of industry, economy of this domain. So in total they expect something like estimated the market size like 544 million in 2050. A growth in Europe, like the other studies, of 30%. The growth for sport and fitness, 35%. They also concluded, and I think we also saw that yesterday at the work group meetings, that till today it is mainly more in the passive smart textiles, as we learned in the qualification system of the first presentation today, when it was about the healthcare and smart textile. So passive smart textiles dominated in 2015, and future smart textiles are expected to react more to stimuli generated by electrical, thermal, chemical, mechanical and magnetic sources. So there's quite a lot of expectations. And it's also expected that research activities in smart textiles, especially supported by the Commission, help in revitalizing industry in this domain. Again, this is not my opinion, this is the outcomes of 3 different studies that I'd like to share and present with you. So what we typically see is that there's several market drives. So this is about decreasing manufacturing costs of electronic compounds, which is important when we speak about integration of those compounds in textile materials, as well as fabrics, along with the miniaturization of electronics. It is simply expected that there will be an increase in demand for heart rate sensors, motion sensors, step counters, in order to make us more aware about personal well-being and healthcare. Again, I also mentioned fitness and elderly, and this is where we expect a lot. So it's not only the performance of professional athletes, though of course that should not be underestimated as well. Developments, innovations are, I think, applicable as well in other domains. We learned this morning about healthcare and PPA, but I think there's identical technologies can be applied in military, automotive, entertainment, I mentioned fun as well, and rehabilitation. Today we see that this is mainly driven by startup companies. There's a lot of small startup companies in the domain, SMEs, but as well very large companies like Nike, Adidas, Wacker Chemie, DuPont, Google, Microsoft. So it is really a very diverse market. Important, I think, role is for the collaboration of different industries with universities and research institutes. So it's also that new collaborations will develop typically outside the domain of textiles. And I think there will be a lot of new innovations and technical innovations, which I think is on this slide. So technologically, I think the market is typically driven by innovations in the domain of new conductive materials, conductive polymers, conductive inks, conductive coatings, advances in the domain of fibers and yarns. I think we saw a variety of examples early this morning. Nanotechnology, just to name a few. Then I think we will have more powerful sensors, actuators, production of energy, energy harvesting, energy storage. And I think the market will change from putting things in yarns and fabric, as we did in the past, towards, as I said, attaching sensors and battery, towards true smart textiles. So really a new generation of textile materials where the sensors and batteries and so on are not really visible. There's enormous progress in the domain of digital printing, like inkjetting, 3D printing, chromojet, braiding technologies, embroidery, which facilitates the next generation of smart textiles. 3D body scanning for individualized smart garments, I mentioned that. And there's a high number of potential smart functions. I think you can read this for yourself, but I think we saw a lot of examples about that in the morning, but this is really a high variety of compounds, and I think that is also typically seen if we look to the members of working group number 5. All these different domains are really presented, and that makes it very nice and challenging, but also difficult to discuss, and I think that's really an important challenge that we face, the multidisciplinarity. Well, a few examples, not so much as in construction, just to fresh up the mind. I think this product is launched 2 weeks ago. It will be available mid-January. It's a shoe which automatically ties the shoelaces via an app. When pressure senses your foot is in the shoe, it ties the shoelaces. But in fact, the shoe contains much more. And in fact, if Nike makes fully use of this shoe, the shoe can also adapt during the sport. So if your foot become warmer, they can loosen the shoelace a little bit. There's similar products from other producers as well. And a Swedish example, of course I come from Sweden, so a Swedish example as well. And I'm a cyclist, so I like this example. This is the textile airbag for cyclists. It has been launched by 2011. I think the 2 examples also show the difference in types of companies available. One was Nike, this is a new company, and this detects via an accelerometer if you drop on the ground, and then the device inflates to protect your head. I think that is a nice example. Well, then there's of course the usual examples that typically everyone thinks about when we speak about healthcare and PPE and sport. This is movement, motion capture, heart rate, pressure sensors, heart rate and breathing. I think this is from existing companies, but there's also a hell of a lot of products you can find on the internet from starts up, from students in this domain. So there's really a lot of expectations. On the other hand, and I think that is in the last slides, I mean, there's also big challenges. And what we see today that is in the market is typically the more conventional wearables, like the sport watches, the Apple watches, and textiles have to be able to compete with that. And that is not easy, because you can have one watch or 4 or 5 bicycle shirts measuring the same. And that is, of course, something we should keep in mind when we think about variety of applications. Yesterday, we therefore also discussed, for example, the importance of the domain of comfort and smart textiles in sport and fitness. I think it is, despite the fact that we speak about this already for years, it's still, I think, an important emerging domain. It's not yet mature at all, but it has very strong potential. I think that's also demonstrated by the different market studies. Important focus areas, I think, are reliability related to washing, batteries, energy, accuracy of sensors. We need to focus on the textile aspect. It should not become a wearable computer. It should be really breathable, flexible. There's need for standardization. And I think we really need to keep in mind that it needs the potential for industrial production, and not all the technologies that we typically use today in our laboratories are suitable for industrial production, as well as the economy of scale. And I think for that we need to really think about novel technologies and progress in that domain. And I think that is also the importance of this cost action and our working group. It is about bringing these things forward by bringing experts together. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Vincent. Please join